mental health is everyone's business. 1 in 4 people have a mental health issue. It affects all of society. If people with a mental health issue aren't looked after by society, then we need to have a rethink about our humanity. I'm Lorna Moxham. I'm the Professor of Mental Health Nursing, and I'm the leader of the Living Well Longer theme in the Global Challenges program at the University of Wollongong. The recovery camp is the first of its kind in Australia. There have been other camps where consumers go away on holidays, but this camp is designed to immerse consumers with students. So the reason it's so unique is that students are learning firsthand by an immersive, experiential program for 5 days. We come on Monday, we don't go home till Friday, and they're learning from each other. And there's nowhere else in Australia that does anything like recovery camp. One of the most positive experiences that consumers have from camp is that sense of belonging, is the support they get from each other, but also from students, and forming social relationships. It's really, really powerful. So our research team is made up of mental health nurses, a senior lecturer from the Faculty of Education, but we've also got a consumer on our interdisciplinary team that lives with bipolar disorder, and he's a peer support worker. So the students are interdisciplinary, but the research team is also interdisciplinary.
Each team member contributes their specialised discipline expertise to examine recovery camp efficacy. The research specifically examines effects on student learning, lived experience of carers, and importantly, quality of life issues for people who live with mental illness.
My name's Taylor Youssef. I'm studying the Bachelor of Nursing Advanced Minoring in Mental Health at the University of Wollongong. I think it's the first thing that I've experienced where consumers with mental illness are able to interact in such an immersive environment and create relationships with people that are therapeutic and really help in their recovery. I think it's incredible, even seeing how people have changed over the week and how open they've become and how much more confident they've become. I think it's incredible.
Hello, am I on? Yes, I'm on. Hi everyone, thanks for coming tonight to our Uni in the Brewery, our Uni in the pop-up brewery in the iAccelerate building. I'm Amanda Morgan from the Research Services Office at the University, and we're running this event tonight with the Global Challenges team. Thank you to them for helping us organise tonight. I'm just going to make some brief housekeeping comments before we get underway. Those comments are, please switch off your phones, not off, but to silent at least. You can still tweet at UOW Research and at Global Challenges, but just so it's on silent out of respect of our speakers. There's emergency exits in the building, the front door that you probably entered by, and there's one in the corridor behind you, and the toilets are also down that corridor. Obviously, some of you have helped yourself to the bar thanks to Illawarra Brewing Company. Obviously, drink responsibly. The food is complimentary. We aim to finish at 6:30, and we'll have time for questions after our speakers finish as well. So I hope you enjoy tonight's talk. I'd now like to introduce our Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University of Wollongong, Professor Judy Raper, to make some introductory remarks and introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. I have to stand on tiptoes. It's all right. I think you can hear me. It's okay. So I'd also like to welcome you to the Uni in the Brewery. Before we start, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet, the Wadi Wadi people of the Dharawal country, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and also to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Let me tell you a little bit about Recovery Camp. I'm sure you guys, our fantastic speakers, are going to tell you a bit more, but what I know about it, it began in 2013 to provide clinical placements for nursing students. And it's had an amazing journey since then. Our Global Challenges program supports and promotes interdisciplinary research. And after Recovery Camp had been going as a clinical placement tool, The Global Challenges funding allowed it to develop into an interdisciplinary research program, and now it provides clinical placements, research and interventions all in one unique program, and it's won multiple awards, and I'm sure that they're not going to talk about all the awards they've got, so I can tell you that the achievements include more than 29,000 clinical hours, 450 students and 400 customers, national and international collaborations. In 2018, it won an Octal Award for teaching. In 2017, it won an Australian Award for University Teaching and National Citation for Outstanding Contribution to Student Learning. It won the 2016 Mental Health Award for Training, presented by the New Zealand Mental Health Commissioner. And in 2016 also it won VC Awards for Excellence in Interdisciplinary Research and VC Vice Chancellor's Awards for Community Engagement. So it is a multiple award-winning program that has benefits for students, participants and research and other participants who aren't participants but who are mentally recovering patients. So it is a fantastic program, and really we owe a debt of gratitude to Professor Lorna Moxham, who started it for us. So I'm going to introduce the speakers, and then I'm going to let all together. Is that what I'm doing? I'm going to introduce the speakers all at once, and then I'll let them speak in the order that they would like to speak and do what they want to do. So Professor Lorna Moxham is a Professor of Mental Health Nursing and the Global Challenge Leader for our Living Well Longer Challenge. Lorna is the most outstanding innovative thinker I know, and she's just a wonderful person, but she's passionate about making a difference in her teaching and research, and she has definitely done that, so thank you, Lorna. Chris Hinder is a third-year nursing student and recovery camp attendee, and he's going to talk about his experience. He's also a member of the Australian College of Nursing and its Emerging Nurse Leaders program. So we can see here a leader of the future. And Kayleen Booth is a participant in recovery camp and has been a participant since its inception, and she's now a presenter as well, so she's transferring her knowledge to the other participants. So we're really grateful that you are doing that, Kayleen, and she's had a lovely article in the Mercury yesterday about her participation in the camp. So thank you very much for your help with the program and for talking tonight. And I think that's all I'm going to say. Over to you, Lorna.
Thank you for Professor Raper, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. In particular, thank you to Kayleen and Chris for being here to speak. But we've also got some other camp participants in the audience too, so I acknowledge our other volunteers who come to camp, who play a really integral role in educating the health professionals of the future. As Professor Raper said, the camp started in 2013, by and large because we don't have enough clinical placements for nursing students. So nursing students have to do 24 theoretical subjects, and they also have to do 800 hours of clinical placement on top of the theoretical subjects that they do. We have to find clinical placements for those nursing students, and they're really quite difficult to find, particularly in specialist areas like mental health. So I can recall one summer looking out the window of my office on the duck pond, and if those of you that have been to the university campus, it's particularly beautiful, pondering this issue of clinical placements, and I wrote a grant at the time to HETI, which is Health Education Training Initiative. Popped the grant in and didn't think too much more about it. And then in April, got the grant and thought, oh, I have to do it now. Gee. All these things seemed like a good idea at the time, but then it came to fruition and we had to do it. So that very first May that year, and Kayleen came to that first camp, we had some really good funding from HETI. We then had a couple of years without funding, and then Global Challenges stepped up to the mark and funded the camp. And that's when we really morphed from, as Professor Raper said, being a clinical placement to truly having a look at the efficacy of the camp from a multidisciplinary research perspective. So Global Challenges is a very unique program in a very unique university. You can't get Global Challenges program without interdisciplinary teams. So our recovery camp team now includes mental health nurses, psychologists, and also a school teacher, someone from the Faculty of Education. And that was really important, we felt, because we wanted the clinical aspect and the teaching aspect from the nurses. But Dana Perlman, who can't be with us tonight and is a school teacher, he's actually on sabbatical at the moment at the University of Arizona, he helps us really understand the pedagogy of the teaching and learning. So there's 3 cohorts of people that we really want to make an impact with. We want to make an impact on the teaching and learning of nursing students, but we also take psychology students, dietetics, nutrition and exercise science students, and we're looking at exploring taking social work students, medical students and other students that are going to be health professionals. We then also make an impact on carers, so people who care for someone who's living with a mental health issue, but who gains a week's respite at camp. And then most importantly, we make an impact on people who live with mental health issues, those with lived experience. But not only are we making an impact on those people are making an impact on the future health professionals. And that's where it's really important. And Kayleen's going to speak about that later. We have a lot of people saying to us, how do you know camp works? So being good academics, we really do need to put a very comprehensive process of research around camp. So we underpin our research at camp with self-determination theory. So we've got a theoretical basis for all that we do. We do understand that when people say, how do you know camp works? Intuitively, I would say, go and ask those with lived experience and go and ask consumers. But unfortunately, funders much prefer statistics and empirical data. So we collect the data. And Kayleen and Chris may or may not mention this, but when we get to camp, we do a lot of paperwork. And that paperwork is to continually evaluate and ensure the efficacy. And that gives us really strong empirical research that we've now collected over 5 years. Recovery Camp as a clinical placement is the only clinical placement in Australia, whether it be a mental health clinical placement, a surgical clinical placement, paediatrics, operating rooms, that actually has a research basis. We know it works from research, not only from student evaluation and consumer evaluation, but from empirical research. We ask people who participate in camp to complete our research, pre-camp, post-camp, and then at 3-month follow-up. And simultaneously, we have a comparison group, those who don't come to camp, do the same sets of measures. So we can start comparing. And we've had some interesting results. One in particular, and from a student perspective, and it's about stigma. 1 in 4 Australians live with a mental health issue. And we know that this is getting stronger and stronger, but stigma is still very much at the fore. I'm probably going to give away my age by saying I've actually been nursing since 1980. And the biggest issue that people with mental illness had when I commenced my nursing training was stigma. And I'm not really sure that we've actually overcome that. We've certainly made some inroads, and we've made some inroads in the areas of anxiety and depression, but I'm not really convinced we've made a lot of inroads in enduring mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar. They're still very much stigmatised. So one of the main research things we do at camp, research areas that we look at camp, is stigma. So we measure students' stigmatising attitudes pre, post and at 3 months, and the same with the intervention group. So the intervention group go to normal clinical placements. They go to hospitals, they go to community health settings, normal clinical placements. We now have 5 years of empirical data to say students who come to CAM come out less stigmatising and stay less stigmatising than those who have a normal clinical placement, a traditional clinical placement. I'm not going to go into why I think their attitudes don't change at normal clinical placements. That's something that future research can look at. But certainly we have a statistical significant difference for people who are coming to CAM. And why does that happen? Because people like Kayleen and Kelly and Mary and other people in the room who are here who are participants at CAM teach the students. Teach the students from lived experience. I've been a professor for a little while now, and I'm sure when I stand up in front of a class and wax lyrical about things, they listen and nod. And then when Kayleen and Kelly and Mary talk about the lived experience, students say things like, I've learned more in the last week, Lorna, than I've learned in 3 years of being at university. And I actually take that as a compliment. The things that happen at CAM, of course they need the theoretical underpinning and the clinical underpinning, but they learn things at CAM that they can't learn from books, and that they don't want to learn from a lecturer or a tutor or a professor. They want to learn from people who are living with these conditions. So things that happen at CAM, students will come up and say things like, can you tell me about antidepressant medication? And we'll go, why don't you go and talk to so-and-so? So the person at CAM who may be living with depression talks about the illness, talks about the medication, talks about their treatments, how they cope, the strategies. All the while doing activities. So what I wouldn't want you to get the impression is that recovery camp is a retreat and that we just do the flying fox and dreadfully scary things like the high swing and things like that scare the bejeebers out of me because I don't like heights. We do those things, but they are the conduit to build trust. And when you build trust, you can build a therapeutic relationship. And when you build a therapeutic relationship, people will talk to you. A therapeutic relationship is the basis of all nursing, of all healthcare. But particularly in mental health, if you come into hospital with a broken arm, you can have an x-ray. If you come into hospital with an infection, we'll give you some antibiotics. It doesn't work that way in mental health. The way nurses need to learn about mental health, not only nurses, future health, all health professionals, is by talking to the people who live and know best. So I'm not going to speak any longer because I'm not the most important person today, but I want to introduce to you now Chris, who came to CAM as a nursing student. Chris is going to talk about his experience and what he learned from being at CAM, but also how he learned from consumers. And then Kayleen, who is probably too shy to tell you, but when Kayleen first came to CAM was pretty quiet and is now running some of our sessions at CAM. So, and is one of our most significant campers, having attended a lot, and is integral in teaching our future health professionals the way we want them to be taught. So from our perspective, Recovery Camp, we believe, is making inroads into stigma. And why is it making inroads into stigma? Because students are having an experiential program, are being immersed in people who live with mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I do apologise. I do have a few notes. I'm 4 weeks into university session, so I can't help but just write everything down at the moment. So today I just wanted to share two important aspects of my recovery camp experience and how it's contributed to my future practice as a registered nurse. So the first is how it's an immersive clinical placement, and the second is how it works to break down barriers. So recovery camp couldn't have been more different from my first clinical placement. For my first placement, I was located with the Forensic Mental Health Network's high dependency unit, where the majority of our patients weren't allowed out of their cells for 2 hours a day. I was the only student in the area working with about 4 nurses and a team of corrections. Often my peers that have attended mental health wards will describe the nurses' station as a fishbowl, where nurses hide from the patients and don't step outside of their protected environment. In these restrictive environments, there are usually 1 to 2 students who are paired with registered nurses in a team of about 5, depending on the size of the unit. My recovery camp experience couldn't have been more different. Recovery camp was an immersive clinical placement. We were empowered to care. We had 10 students and 10 volunteers being facilitated by 2 experienced registered mental health nurses. So recovery camp's immersive environment allows students to engage with people with a lived experience of mental illness in ways that just aren't possible on a typical clinical placement. We ate meals together, we went on walks together, and we participated in team-based activities. On recovery camp, the volunteers' medical history isn't known to us, whereas on a typical placement, you'd have all their information in front of you. So you'd have their diagnosis, medications, reason for admission, and the things that have happened in the last 72 hours. This means that on recovery camp, we come with no assumptions from other sources about who they are. We have to talk to the volunteers to learn about their situation. I remember going for a walk with one of the volunteers, and we discussed how he found out about recovery camp, and that was through his psychologist. He had a relapse of anxiety and didn't want to leave his house anymore. He moved on to start talking about how great going for a morning walk is. He told me that he used to do it all the time, but stopped going for walks after his dog died. And that's when things started to go a bit south for him again. So from this time spent walking, we were able to work out something that he might be able to do about it when he gets home to promote his recovery after he leaves the camp. This therapeutic relationship was built in time that you wouldn't have on your average clinical placement. Some of the activities we do on camp are very thrill-seeker type. So the things you typically do and see at a recreation camp, like giant swing, flying fox, rock climbing, all those types of activities. But the purpose of doing this isn't just for fun. These activities provide us as students with the opportunity to support and encourage volunteers to step outside their comfort zone and for us all to be supported whilst doing so. I say all because some of the students can find themselves in the receiving end of support from the team and to step outside of their own comfort zones. This is a very special part of recovery camp because it gives us all the chance to support our teammates and further emphasises the fact that we're all human beings and we all need help sometimes. One of the key components of recovery camps is in the way in which it reduces stigma and negative perceptions of people with lived experience of mental illness. It might be surprising for you to hear that some research has shown that nursing and health students actually have worse attitudes towards people with mental illness than the rest of the university student population. Recovery camp starts to break down these negative attitudes from the moment we get on the bus. This is because we don't know who the volunteers are and who the students are, and we all travel to camp together. At UOW, I actually have about 400 students in my cohort, and it's across about 5 campuses up and down the coast from South Sydney to Bega, so it's pretty easy not to know who's in your class. So by eating and walking and talking with each other, this allows time for volunteers to teach us about their experiences with mental illness in a disarming environment. This is where we learn from them about what it's like to live with a mental illness, what their daily struggles are and how they overcome them. We learn about what medications they took and the side effects they experience. How do they keep track of their pills? What do they do when things get tough? How have they found the supports in the community helpful or unhelpful? What is that we do? What are the things that we do as health professionals that make them feel better and more supportive? And what are some of the things that don't work for them? These conversations happen in the safety of the trust that's been created through the rapport building and the teamwork that started in the activities. One of the best moments for me on recovery camp was supporting a volunteer along the high ropes course. He was quite reluctant to participate and unsure of himself. With this activity, we had to work together in pairs to safely get across the course. I said to him I would support him while I do it, so get him to watch me do it, because I go along the course, he's down the bottom, make sure I clip on properly and do all the right safety checks. So I just whizzed across it, showed him it was safe, it's a bit of fun, and then once we got down, I said, look, just put the harness on, and then you don't have to do anything else, just put the harness on. And so we put the harness on, and then it was like, right, now climb up the ladder, and just get to the top of the ladder. You don't have to do anything other than get to the top of the ladder. And then we had a really good facilitator within the group that works for YMCA, and I was like, if I can get him up the ladder, he'll convince him to do the rest. And he did. So he clicked on, and then he took a step off that platform and out of his comfort zone and traversed not one but 2 of the sections and made his way back again. So there's 5 sections in total, so got through 80% of the course, and he didn't even want to climb up the ladder. So what have I learned from this recovery camp experience that I'll take with me when I undertake my graduate program next year? I've learned that, unsurprisingly, that we're all individuals with different life experiences, that this needs to be valued and we all have our strengths and opportunities to grow. I've learned how to develop trust and build rapport with someone that has a lived experience of mental illness. They've also validated some important things that we learn at university, but don't really hold much meaning until someone tells you how important it is to them. These are things like asking people what they'd like to be called, introducing them to the oncoming shift, discussing their progress at the bedside, not out in the corridor for everyone else to hear. I learned that people often find a measure of comfort in their diagnosis, but it's not for me to label people or make assumptions based on what that diagnosis is. Recovery camp has enhanced my understanding of the importance of focusing on people and seeing them for the unique human beings that they are. So now I'd like to introduce you to Kayleen. Kayleen is a veteran of recovery camp, as we've heard. She's attended since 2013 and has only missed one camp since the program commenced. So Kayleen would like to share a bit about herself now and talk about what recovery camp means to her.
Hello, I've been going to all the, I missed one because my mother was sick, but you'll have to excuse me, I've got problems with my memory, so I might go over things. But I'm the oldest one that goes to camp, I'm 63, but I've had a mental health issue as far as I can remember back. From when I was about, in my 20s, I had a really bad car accident, I was paralysed for 2 years. And with my mental health issues and chronic pain, it started a revolving door of in and out of hospital all the time. In the last, 40 years plus, the longest I've ever been out of hospital is 2 years. I've done my 2 years, I went to camp, now I've been out of hospital for 8 years. So, to me, the camp is something I rely on. I've changed so much in myself. I talk to people now, I mix now. And if I get half a cup of coffee and I want a full coffee, I'll take it back and say, I've only got froth on the top. Before, I would just take it. But now I think, no, I'm paying for that. So I want my coffee. But I've to me, I've really bloomed in talking, and I love the camp. I love educating the nurses. I love them to know what it's like to have a mental illness. I want them to know that, I've been in there for so many different things, not just mental illness, but physical illness. And they look at my chart and see I've got a mental health issue, and I am judged by that straight away. It's really depressing when that happens. I'm not my illness, but I'm not ashamed of my illness anymore. Before I was, but now I'm not. So I embrace it. I know what things happen now. I know when I'm coming down or going up with my bipolar, and I just deal with it. But I need camp to help me, and that's part of it. I think that's my phone. I did turn it on silent. No, it's a reminder to have my drip. I haven't had it today. Yeah. Sorry about that. That's all right.
So, how did you hear about recovery camp, Kay?
Recovery camp, I attended a group, a mental health recovery discovery group on a Monday, and she actually got a email about the camp, and I thought, well, okay, I tried to get other people to say they'll come, but nobody would. So I thought, no, I'll go. And I packed my things up, signed the paper, and packed my bags, and no. And the first few camps, if someone sat at the same table, I would move, or I would go and sit on my own. I wouldn't interact. I was that shy and that scared. And I noticed the nurses in the first camp particularly, they were so terrified of us. And I'm very much a people watcher, and I could see on their faces what I was like. Now I've got the question. I told you I would do this.
It's all right. So if you think back to your first recovery camp experience, how did you feel at that time?
Yeah. very scared, very, very scared. But I was helped through. The nurses did help, the facilitators helped, and just doing the activities together. It took a few camps for me to come out of myself, but as you can see, this is me now. You won't shut me up.
So now you've attended recovery camp a couple times. What changes have you seen in yourself?
I think I've gone through that, but yeah, the more outgoing, talk to people. Just, no, I even with the recovery camp, just talking to the nurses, and I just feel more confident than I ever been in my life. I've never been like this, never ever. And it's so good to feel that I'm part of life now, not death. I was actually went through and did some clean-up the other day, and I had a book, an exercise book, and a letter fell out of it. And I don't know when I wrote it, but I read it and I thought, geez, I was in a really dark place. Because all I had in the letter is, I can't get out of this hole, this black hole. There was no light, it was just a black tunnel, and there was nothing. And all I wanted to do was die. And that's been my life for a long time. And I remember when I was 16 and I said something to my mother, she pushed me away and said, don't be stupid. So, yeah, but the camp's really changed.
So one of the first things Kayleen said to me when she got to camp, we were in a big circle, and she was saying how, you know, the reason that she comes to camp now is because she wants to teach nursing students. So what are some of the important things that you want to convey to the students when they come to camp?
The main thing is, don't judge us. We're not going to put a pillow over their face and smother them or anything else. You know, that was just part of, I kept saying, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Now I've got to go and told to do it.
It's all right. So what do you like to teach the students? What do you think is
I
important?
want the students to realise that we are human beings, just like them, you know. Like I said, I've been in hospital quite a few times, and I've had nurses stand outside and talk about me and about my mental illness, and it's been very, very upsetting. And it's the stigma attached to it is unbelievable. It really is. It's getting a bit better. These nurses coming through, and they're saying, oh, we never thought about that, because I said, if you're going to talk about a person, don't do it outside their door. I said, they can hear you. I said, what do you think they're going to feel when you're saying something very negative? You know, they're going to get depressed. And it's not just people with mental illness. People come out and have operations, and you can get depressed after anaesthetic. That's quite well known. But to stand there and talk about the person very negative because they have a mental illness or they're depressed, it makes you depressed more. So, yeah.
So in what ways has it helped you with your mental health, the recovery camp? So you were telling me before about how there was some kids screaming.
Oh, yeah. One of the camps, I think it would be probably about the 5th, maybe more. I had post-traumatic stress. I got stabbed. And it was a young person that did it, young male, and all I could hear is him screaming to the other people who were in the house. And the screaming of these kids that were at camp, there was another school of kids. I just sort of froze. I was absolutely terrified, and I had to walk past them to get to the unit that we were in, the bunkhouse. And I just cried. Most of the time I just stood there and cried, and no, I can't do this. But I thought, no, I can do it. And I went sort of a little bit close and stood there for a while, and the next day I heard him again and did the same thing. By the end of the camp, by the end of the 5 days, it didn't worry me that much. I thought, yes, I did it. The post-traumatic stress is still there, but there's nowhere near what it used to be. So I was exposed to that at the camp. So there's nowhere else I would be exposed to and deal with it like I did. So there's just so much with the camp. I just want everyone to know and just everyone to learn, and it's just a real passion of mine to, you know, I'm alive. I want to stay alive, you know. I want to teach. I want people to know I'm not ashamed of what I am. I'm not ashamed anymore. Yep.
So who do you think should attend recovery camp?
I think anybody with a mental health issue should attend because it's so rewarding. But anyone in the health profession at all, even to me, nurses who have been on the ward for a while, they need to attend. They need to understand because they haven't had the camp. They don't know what it's like. And I've said to the new ones, you know, when you go on the ward and someone starts talking outside the room or outside my room or outside anyone's room about me very negative, just say, look, how about we go somewhere down the hall or something like that? Yep.
Yep. Alrighty. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. See if does anyone have any questions for our speakers tonight?
Including Lorna.
Including Lorna. Lorna can come up and join us here on stage. Does anyone have any questions? I can start with a question. I actually wanted to just get a sense from you, Lorna, when you first started the program, how you got psychologists, health professionals to be involved and to understand what you were trying to do and get some people along to participate.
Thank you. It was reasonably easy in some respects to get nursing students involved because their 800 hours a week is mandatory, so they have to have a clinical placement. I'm very fortunate enough to be working at the University of Wollongong because I suspect if I'd positioned this idea to anybody else or to any other university, they might have said, you want to do what, and you want to take who, and you're going to do what when you're there, and no, you're not. Because most people are risk averse. But the University of Wollongong embraced it, and Global Challenges funded. And now we're developing a social enterprise here at iAccelerate that is actually accelerating the camp. So then we started thinking, well, psychology students actually don't have any clinical placements in their 4-year degree, so it would be beneficial for them. A little bit harder to get for them because they have to do it outside of, it's above and beyond. But we're now working with and talking to social work students, dietetic students. So for example, when we take our exercise physiology students or our dietetics and nutrition students, they do groups about healthy eating. So we try and tailor it that way. But yeah, we're open to taking, it shouldn't just be for nurses. It's not only nurses that work in health professions.
Thanks for your talk. I just have a question, I guess. Can everyone hear me? Am I loud enough? About the future of the program. So do you foresee it actually, because obviously it's an amazing program and I can see the impact that it's had, but do you foresee it going further than Wollongong and actually being something that is maybe not compulsory but is definitely has a wider catchment?
That's a really good question, and it was about will it get wider. So we started at the University of Wollongong and we now take students from 7 universities. So 2 weeks ago we ran a camp and we had 10 students from Central Queensland University, came down from Queensland, and we had 20 from Charles Sturt University. As I said, we now have morphed or are morphing into a social enterprise because we do need to make it sustainable. That's again something that I think the University of Wollongong has been so supportive with. A lot of universities would be saying things like, you're not just offering it to other people, but the University of Wollongong have seen the benefit for all health professionals, and that's part of our research too. So we're not saying that it really works for University of Wollongong students. We can now say it works for students from 7 different universities. But what a great segue to say, if there happens to be a philanthropist in the room with reasonably shallow pockets, obviously we want recovery camp to be sustainable. One of the ways we're doing that is to make it into a social enterprise, and our new managing director, Marika, is right here with fabulous business background who's going to herd us, because we're academics and academics need to be herded, and help us take it forward. All the whilst we're sitting here at iAccelerate learning those processes. But obviously we would also like, we write research grants, and anyone in the room that writes those, there's about a 7% hit rate, so we don't get a lot of research grants. We're waiting at the moment for an ARC, hoping they're going to say yes. But we also would like some sponsorship or some philanthropy that Americans seem to be really good at paying forward, and we're hoping that that, Gina Reinhardt will walk through the door and say, here's a little bit of money, but thank you.
So can I ask Kayleen a question? So Kayleen, you've just heard that we're going to grow, and we've got 7 universities already, and there's going to be more, and it will expand to other areas of mental illness or other sorts of illness. How many camps can you go on a year? I will go on every one that I can. If there's a position there, I'm in. I already said to, is it Rowena? Yep. I already said to her today, don't ask me, just put my name down for it. Fantastic. That's, my physical ability now isn't as good as it used to be, but I'm still doing the best I can. I'm there for the nurses, I'm there for some of the participants as well. I have a lot of people talk to me. But I do what I can, and I enjoy it. It's just a real passion of mine, because it's kept me alive. So, and I love it. I love being alive now. Fantastic.
Just on that too, and Kate, we believe that this is the way future health professionals should be educated about mental health. Yes, they should learn from books. This is the way they should learn. So, Kayleen teaches them. Kelly teaches our students. Mary teaches students. That's invaluable learning.
She's doing your job. I know. Come back, leave the microphone out there, and I'll get someone to do that. You come back.
Sorry, yeah. Could you just obviously there's camps. Just alluded to. I thought there might have only been one big camp for you. I wasn't sure. Could you tell us a little bit how the program works, the service delivery aspect and the follow-up, and because you obviously got Kayleen in here, and how that all links up in a circle each year. People obviously attend, but when they leave, you got the after effects. Yep. And I think you're onto something there with the practical education of nurses. There's that happening in the education sector with Indigenous people, so getting teachers culturally competent. They do very similar things on this campus even too, so there's people on campus that you could talk to. It's similar methods but different areas. So and that's Anthony McKnight. He does that with his pre-education students. Yeah.
Thank you. So very quickly, procedurally wise, people with a lived experience can come if they're over 18, if they're living in the community, and they're reasonably well. You just can't be an inpatient. And we ask you to let us know if you've got any issues with substance use that you might withdraw from remote camp, so we need to know things like that. But apart from that, we don't have a criteria or an assessment criteria. And then Monday morning we get on a bus, we head up to camp, and then when we get up there, there's usually about 80 of us, and we break off into 4 groups. And they're green, red, blue and yellow, and I think that's because we've got green, red, blue and yellow cameras. It's not very scientific, but we break off into 4 groups, and we spend the week in those groups, so they're smaller groups. But we eat together, all together, and we do some activities together, but we do a lot of activities individually. That first day, though, we do a lot of research, so that's when we do the pre-testing or the pre-camp surveys. And then, as Kayleen and Chris have talked about, we do the activities all week, which are the rapport and the team building. And we also spend a lot of time talking about mental health issues and strategies. And then Friday comes, we do the post-camp research, and people go home. I think you've asked a very interesting questions, because I think you can probably tell at camp you can get on a really big high. And then when you're on a really big high, you can have a dip. And we recognise that. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're creating a brochure. And one of the things that's really important to us at camp is that people with lived experience lead things. So Kelly, who's here, we've employed Kelly as a research assistant, and Kelly is helping us design that brochure. And we're doing that very, very deliberately. As an academic, I could write a brochure. As a clinician, I could write a brochure, and I could take this home and read it. That's not what we wanted to do. Kelly has led that, and we've done it through research as our chief investigator on the development of that brochure. So in May camp, Kelly handed out a series of surveys, and participants at camp with the lived experience talked about, what do you do when you get home that helps you stay well? So we gathered all that data. We then did a thematic analysis on those. We went back to the July camp just recently and did a focus group. So we themed them, took them back to the participants and said, this is what we've come up with. Is there anything else you'd like to add? So the next stage then that Callie will lead us on is the actual development of the brochure. So once again, what we're trying to do is more and more of the activities in the camp are being led by people with lived experience, and also the development of the brochure. So being good academics, we know that we'll need to publish something, and we will publish the process of that brochure, but Kelly will be first author on that publication. So we're trying very hard to empower people, but that's by and large the process. Yeah. So if anyone here has a lived experience, or you know anyone with a lived experience, we do have a website, recoverycamp.org.com.au, where you can download any information or see how you'd like to participate in camp.
Any other questions? I'm pretty sure that Chris and Kayleen and Lorna will be around for a little bit longer, so you could have a chat to them if you've got any other questions or want to have a more intimate discussion with them. I want to ask everyone to give them a big round of applause.